Welcome back to Week in IT, a bite sized recap of the most significant news and developments in the enterprise IT space, as researched, reported, and curated by the real live editors of Converge 360 and narrated by AI. I'm Gladys Rama. First up, if your role involves IT security in any capacity, you're probably still reeling from a major zero-day attack that cropped up this past weekend tied to Microsoft SharePoint. As we reported on Redmond Mag, there's been an active and highly effective exploitation of a critical SharePoint flaw that has been used to breach multiple government systems. As you can imagine, this poses a huge threat to unpatched on-prem SharePoint deployments. Attackers can exploit this vulnerability to create authentication tokens and execute arbitrary code remotely. According to security researchers, over 9,000 externally accessible SharePoint servers are at risk, with the attack already impacting as many as 400 organizations, including the U.S. Nuclear Security Administration. Microsoft released patches for SharePoint 2019 and SharePoint SE early this week, while a patch for SharePoint 2016 should be incoming. But researchers say patching isn't enough. Organizations need to make physical architecture improvements too. Things like air-gapped networks and data diodes could have prevented data exfiltration for the affected businesses. Another best practice is to combine physical architecture with zero-trust configurations. We're keeping an eye on the fallout from this attack, but meanwhile, the recommendations for IT teams are as follows. Apply the Microsoft patches, monitor for SharePoint 2016 updates, investigate anomalies, rotate cryptographic keys, invalidate sessions, and reevaluate network segmentation and firewall rules around SharePoint. Moving on now to the thorny intersection of AI, cloud, and the jobs market. If you remember from last week, we talked about how the recent wave of layoffs among cloud's big three have coincided uncomfortably with massive investments in AI infrastructure. The obvious conclusion, even if they won't admit it, is that Microsoft, Amazon, and Google are funding these huge infrastructure builds, in part, with the money they're saving by slashing headcounts. Case in point, AWS just recently confirmed to multiple outlets that it is undertaking significant layoffs right as it commits $100 million to boost agentic AI development. Once again, this highlights a growing trend among hyperscalers that bucks the old nugget about AI creating new jobs rather than replacing existing ones. In fact, Amazon has laid off around 14,000 employees since 2024, while simultaneously pouring over $40 billion into AI and cloud investments. Through a spokesperson, Amazon called the cuts, quote, necessary as we continue to invest, hire, and optimize resources to deliver innovation for our customers, unquote. More on our article in Virtualization and Cloud Review, which is linked in the description box below. And finally, speaking of AI infrastructure, OpenAI and Oracle announced their plan to jointly develop an additional 4.5 gigawatts of data center capacity for the Stargate project. As we reported on Pure AI, this would significantly boost the total capacity under development for Stargate to over 5 gigawatts. The announcement follows recent reports, including one from the Wall Street Journal, suggesting that Stargate has been struggling to gain momentum, forcing it to scale back its plans. As one of the most ambitious AI infrastructure projects in U.S. history, Stargate initially aimed for 10 gigawatts of computing capacity over 4 years based on a staggering $500 billion funding commitment. But there have been concerns over securing the necessary funding, including an initial $100 billion to get things rolling. Recently, sources have alleged there's friction between OpenAI and venture capital partner SoftBank, though they did issue a joint statement denying any setbacks and reiterating their commitment to delivering 10 gigawatts of new compute capacity. All of this points to surging demand for computing power to fuel generative AI services. The exact funding structure for the full $500 billion commitment remains largely unclear, though, making this expansion a crucial test of whether private companies can deliver on infrastructure promises that rival government-level investment programs. And that wraps up this edition of Week in IT. You can find links to all of these stories in the description box below. Make sure to subscribe and get notifications so you don't miss the next episode of this series and all of our Converge 360 videos. Until next week.